for tonight. Thank you so much. Welcome to the virtual open house for the Riverside County Transportation Commission Transit-Oriented Communities Strategic Plan. It's a little bit of a mouthful, so I'll say it slowly. Riverside County Transportation Commission Transit-Oriented Communities Strategic Plan. My name is Jessica Padilla-Bowen, and I'm a member of the project team for the strategic plan, and I will be serving as your moderator for tonight. Before we have further introductions, I wanted to let everyone know that we're providing live Spanish interpretation for today's meeting. And to access that via Zoom, you click on that interpretation icon at the bottom of the screen and select the language, Spanish, from there. Para interpretación en español via Zoom, haga clic en el icono Interpretation en el parte inferior de su pantalla. Escoja la opción para escuchar en español. And now let's have our introductions of our team members. To start us off, I'd like to turn it over to Jenny Chan.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jenny Chan. I am the Planning and Programming Manager at RCTC, and I am also the project manager for this study.
Yes, good evening. My name is Sheldon Peterson. I'm the RCTC Rail Manager, here to help with any operations questions, and thank you all for joining us this evening.
Hello, my name is Ariel Alcontapia, and I am the Senior Management Analyst in Public Affairs here at RCTC.
Good evening. My name is Adam Malitsky. I'm with Stantec, and we are the consultant that is leading this study on behalf of RCTC.
I'm Jane Carlson. I work for a firm called HRNA, and we're providing the real estate advisory and economic development consulting services.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, let's move on to our next slide, and we'll go over a few more logistics for the meeting. So we mentioned about the Spanish interpretation for tonight, and there's some instructions in writing for anyone who needs to access that. Again, the button's at the bottom of the screen. And our next slide, please. Okay, so let us tell you a little bit about our open house guidelines for today. We are asking for everyone's help in creating a respectful environment for our open house. And so we ask that everyone treat community members and our panelists with respect. And that respectful communication extends to all of the forms of engagement, which will include our question and answer and our chat function as well. We're going to ask that only one person speak at a time. We'll do our best here. You know how it is on virtual and Zoom. Sometimes we get excited, so we'll try to also speak slowly because we want our interpreter to be able to keep everyone informed. All right, next slide, please. And so today we'll start with a brief presentation, tell you more about transit-oriented communities, and then we will be setting most of the time aside tonight to take questions and provide some answers and more information. So I wanted to let you know we're going to do that a couple of ways. You could share your questions with us using the chat button that's also at the bottom of the screen, or you can use the question and answer button that's also at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So you have a couple of options there. And you can enter your questions at any time, and then we'll save them for the question and answer portion of the open house. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Jenny Chan.
Yes, good evening, everyone. As I mentioned previously, my name is Jenny Chan, and I'm the project manager for this study. I want to first thank everyone for making time out of their busy schedule to join us at our open house. I look forward to hearing your comments and to answer any questions you may have for our study. If this is your first time attending an RCTC meeting, welcome. You might also be wondering, who is RCTC? What's our mission? Why are we doing this? Well, I'm here to answer these questions first. The Riverside County Transportation Commission was established in 1976 with the goal of implementing critical regional transportation projects and initiatives in Riverside County. Our agency's mission is to improve the quality of life for residents in Riverside County through our transportation investments. Our past projects include construction of the 15 express lanes, construction of the 91 Paris Metrolink line, expansion of the La Sierra Metrolink parking, and currently we're working on clearing the project level environmental document for CV Rail, which will bring new rail service between Los Angeles and Coachella Valley. Today, we're talking about the Transit-Oriented Community Strategic Plan, so I hope you joined the right meeting. Through grant funding from the Federal Transit Authority, we are studying transit-oriented development opportunities along the 8 Metrolink station along the Paris Valley line. Next slide. We wanted to do this study because after building the 24 miles of the 91 Paris Valley line in 2016, we noticed that TOD developments in Riverside County have been isolated along the corridor. We want to understand why that is and how do we make communities more walkable, bikeable, and have increased access to public transportation. We want to understand the unique challenges facing Riverside County in building transit-oriented development and what regulatory or policy changes the region needs to have in place in order to incentivize future transit-oriented development in our station communities. This study will also provide a roadmap that includes a financial plan to help the region implement the projects identified in our visionary plan. And lastly, success of this plan relies heavily on public input and feedback. We want to hear from you. At tonight's open house, you'll learn more about our plan and have the opportunity towards the end to ask our project team any questions and or to share any comments you may have about our plan, such as what bike or pedestrian connections are missing at a Metrolink station, or what transit connection you like to see between a Metrolink station and a regional destination, or how would you like your community to look like near our Metrolink station? Is it more apartments, more places where people can gather, or do you simply like the way it is right now? If you don't have comments today, that's perfectly fine. Rest assured that this open house is only the first step in our public outreach process. There will be many more future opportunities for community members to weigh in, which Adam, our project manager, will go over shortly. And with that, thank you again for joining tonight's open house, and I'll turn it over to Adam to provide more details to the study.
Great, thank you, Jenny, and thank you all for being here and learning more about the strategic plan. This is a very exciting time for Riverside County, and certainly a great opportunity to be having this conversation since there has been significant growth, folks moving into Riverside County. And really the study is founded on sort of 3 goals that we have, and we'll continue to meet with you all as we have our design workshops and talk with you at pop-up events about what your vision is. But sort of at the core, the 3 major goals we're working towards are creating a connected community by maximizing mobility choice. And we recognize that it's very expensive for a lot of people to own and operate a car. The studies show that it costs over $10,000 a year to own and operate a car, and so that's not necessarily feasible for everyone. And some people just prefer to avoid the congestion that you're seeing on the 215 or the 91. And Metrolink is an RTA, and some of the other services that are provided are great alternatives to highway congestion. And so, it's about expanding choice. It's not saying one mode is better than the other, but offering options for folks to get around safely and efficiently in Riverside County. As part of the work that we're doing, we also want to create a sense of place. And what do we mean by that? Communities that are thriving, typically they draw on sort of the historic character of a neighborhood. They're interesting places to gather, parks and open space and coffee shops to meet your neighbors and really build community. Public art certainly is a part of that, sort of reflecting the people who sort of live there, and really gives it a sense of identity for the community. Those are places that people want to sort of go to And so, you think of, Mission Inn or downtown Riverside, downtown Paris, places that are walkable, have a sense of, history and character. So we definitely want to build on the great things that are already happening within the corridor as we develop plans. And then finally, so in order to support this kind of walkable community that's thriving, that has a mix of grocery stores and businesses and other amenities, there needs to be a certain level of density to support that kind of environment. And so, we're looking at in some locations, buildings that and development projects that actually are already built, right? So Corona North Main, the Metra Main project is a really good example of sort of higher density, mixed use, residential and retail. And if you have several of those types of projects, you can kind of create a critical mass that will, create a walking environment, increase the density, more people near transit stations, and you'll see increases in ridership. So those are the key goals, but we look forward to sort of exploring these, and maybe there are other aspects that we should be covering. So as Jenny mentioned, there are 8 stations that we're looking at as part of this study. So from Corona West on the west end of the corridor, near the 91 freeway, all the way up through Riverside, so the La Sierra, downtown, and Hunter Park UCR stations. And then on the Paris Valley line, we're looking at Moreno Valley, Marchfield, Paris Downtown, and Paris South. So, we've been using this term transit-oriented communities, but what exactly does that mean? So you might have heard of transit-oriented development. That term's been around for 20 or so years. And, that refers specifically to a project, a development project, that has been built, site specific. But transit-oriented communities is kind of a broader term that really looks at, kind of gets back to the goals I just spoke about. And it offers people mobility choice, right? Opportunity to bike, walk, take transit, to a station or to their destination. So they're connected communities. They're livable. So there are parks and open spaces. People feel comfortable, walking in neighborhoods. There's tree canopy, certainly as temperatures are rising in the Inland Empire. So creating a comfortable environment where people feel they can thrive and connect with others. And then a prosperous environment. So, development that promotes affordable housing, allows people of all income levels to live and thrive and work within the station areas, and promotes job growth, and the types of jobs that are well-paying and are really sort of oriented to transit, jobs that people would take transit to if they had the right service and amenities in place. So just some examples here from California, just so you can get it kind of visualize what TOCs are. Just down the line in Orange County in Fullerton, the city has been making several investments in their downtown. And their land that they've assembled that's turned into TOD projects, development projects. A great example of that is Malden Station. And so that's right next to the Metrolink and Amtrak tracks you can see here. And so a mix of residential, some retail spaces. There is parking, structured parking, but it's wrapped by the units. And so you don't see the parking structure. And the building is really well integrated into the existing neighborhoods and the context. And so that's an important consideration for us as we work with you to sort of envision, what your communities could become. We want anything that's proposed, we want to respect the existing context And this is a really great example of that in Fullerton. And SoCo District, again, with an eye towards, giving people sort of a fun, vibrant sort of setting, a place people want to go. The city has created the SoCo District. And so it's a very walkable area. It draws on, some of the materials that are used, and the public art draws on some of the, the historic sort of packing and industrial uses, citrus packing industry within the city of Fullerton, and certainly within, Corona and Riverside. So yeah, it's a great place where people can meet up, dine, meet with friends. It's a safe, walkable environment. Some of the streets have been pedestrianized. So we're going to look at some opportunities for that, for that type of district within the corridor. So I mentioned a project called Metra Main, and this is it's actually near the North Main station. So just to give you some context, it's sort of just off the map here, but you've got the 91 freeway to the south. You've got Grand Boulevard south of the tracks. Here are the buses on at the station, right? RTA buses. And then this is that sort of multicolor parking structure you may be familiar with right at the station. And so the city a few years ago adopted a specific plan, and that is a new set of policies and ordinances. And the push was really to generate mixed use and multifamily housing. So turning a lot of what was, historic packing house, industrial structures here in Corona near the mainline tracks to residential. And so you can see here, not unlike what was done in Fullerton, they've actually wrapped the parking structure. So you really just see, the residential units, you see the retail. Some of the buildings are brought right up to Main Street. And so it really helps to enclose, the street and, creates a much more walkable environment. There's, landscaping sort of soft at the edges and, screen certain areas. So it's a really great example of the kind of development that we would be exploring through this process. And it's something that is at one of our stations, one of our 8 stations already. So I'd recommend, check that out if you're interested. Mission Loss is another great project, and that's just east of the Riverside downtown station. So a great housing project there. And there are plenty of examples in downtown Riverside of this kind of development that you're seeing. So the benefits of TOCs are environmental, economic, and social. And I'll just touch on a few of these. But with more people using transit and choosing to bike and walk, even for maybe you're driving to work, but when you get home, that errand you have to run to the grocery store, you could walk there. Even those trips and make a huge difference in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and what we call vehicle miles traveled. So the overall, use of road infrastructure, those are reduced. And with that, you get improved air quality and, more efficient use of land. Certainly. So, focusing investment and creating communities that are sort of concentrated and not necessarily as spread out. I should say that, again, this is about, in addition to mobility choice, the plan is really about offering housing choice. And so, we recognize that, there's a certain development pattern that has emerged in Riverside County over the past 50 to 75 years. That's great. We're hoping to look at other ways to provide for affordable housing, mixed use housing, and other housing choices, so people can live near the station and certainly thrive. So economic sort of impacts. If you don't need to have a car, That is possible, certainly in the near future in Riverside County. You can direct that money elsewhere, right? And reinvest it locally in the community. And so there's several kind of multiple benefits there of using transit and walking and biking. And then social, you certainly meet more people when you're taking transit, and it's a great environment to be in. Taking Metrolink is a very enjoyable experience. It's very relaxed. You can get your work done. I've used it often. It's fantastic. Certainly health benefits. If you have a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, you can certainly track it, but it makes a significant difference. Again, if you run that errand, if you actually run, certainly, or you walk to the store, that's going to have a significant impact on your overall well-being and your health. So we've identified in fall, we went through this kind of deep dive and looked at some of the barriers and challenges and opportunities along the corridor. So Jenny and Ariel and several of us on the team, we went out to each of the stations. We did a site visit, we took pictures, and so that information has all been documented, and we will be posting what we're calling the station area profiles to the project website. And later on, Jessica will walk through the website and show you exactly where that information will be housed. But a few just high-level barriers corridor-wide. There is a limited number of daily trains, but this is improving along the Paris Valley corridor. So there are now 12 trains per day, which is encouraging. And RCTC recently received funding, for additional improvements to expand the capacity along the Paris Valley line. So that, coupled with the improvements that Metrolink is planning to make as part of their SCORE program in advance of the 28 Olympics, that'll definitely start to improve travel times, particularly on weekends. We've heard that there's really a desire, if you're heading to the beach, the desire for increased service on the weekends, and for folks even opposite direction, visiting from Orange and LA counties to visit places around the corridor. Single occupancy vehicles, unsurprisingly, are sort of the dominant mode. Folks who get to the station, upwards of 90% of folks arriving to the station drive. So there's sort of a cultural, sort of conversation or relationship with the car. Is there a more efficient, bus route to get there, or a shuttle, or eventually, self-driving cars? How do new technologies start to change how we choose to move? Market realities, so kind of the economics for this type of higher density, product that we're looking at. The west end of the corridor, Corona and Riverside, certainly are more mature markets. They're fully built out and are already seeing, as we saw earlier, some of this development. But Paris Valley is, it's very new. This kind of transit-oriented development. There is a great example of it downtown, the Paris Station Apartments, and you see that in example in the video that we created for the project here. So something to check out. It's a great project there. And so we'll be, and Jane, one of our panelists, her team will be identifying what some of those key factors are, and is it land value, what's really preventing from a market perspective some of this development in particularly the eastern half of the corridor. So with that, we'll start to remove some of the barriers, propose policy changes to allow for a more mature market to develop. And so, as I mentioned, a lot of the stations in Corona and Riverside, they're fully built out. And so, it's more of a difficult sort of exercise for developers to assemble land and sort of use existing, repurpose existing buildings. And so, we're looking at, some strategies there for land assembly and providing infrastructure to promote development. But then if you look at Paris South, it's largely undeveloped, right? And so, and part of that is because it's within a floodplain. So there are, some issues there about possibly bringing in fill and what kind of uses would be appropriate. So this is not a one size fits all exercise where, we want to start with the unique sort of considerations and characteristics at each of the station and present that information to you all so we can have a conversation about, what's most appropriate going forward. But there are several opportunities. As I mentioned, there's just been a rapid growth, both in people moving to Riverside County, but also home values. And, we want to make sure that, people are not being priced out, they're not being displaced as home values rise, and that there are, housing options provided to them to continue to live within the station areas. I mentioned autonomous vehicles, but there's just a greater awareness about biking and walking and sort of the advantages there. I mentioned the improvements to Metrolink through the SCORE program, so that's really exciting. And then, this process is supported by 3 committees. We have a technical advisory committee, and that's, city staff from Corona, Riverside, the County of Riverside, Moreno Valley, Paris, and the JPA. And that's, they've been incredible partners and, helping us to identify what those policy changes might be and, what some of the barriers that they've been facing so we can address those through the plan. So our technical advisory committee, we have a community advisory committee, folks from various organizations throughout the corridor, and then a developer advisory committee. So developers who are interested and do these kind of projects and can give us really great insight. So the timeline. We launched in fall 2021, and again we went through that sort of deep dive looking at existing conditions. We've started the visioning process, developing kind of the high-level goals and objectives for each of the stations. And we're currently developing what we're calling TOC Alternatives. And we soon will be posting to the website, and Jess will show you where those are, what we're calling briefing books. And they're really just high-level, just ideas, maybe perhaps, a bike improvement along this corridor, or, a new park here, or a pedestrian bridge to, kind of bridge a gap or critical connection. And it's really intended as a conversation starter. So we want to hear from you, do you like this idea? Do you like that idea? What do you think would be most beneficial for your station community? And, we look forward to having those conversations with you both virtually and in person when we have our design workshops in early November. And so, just, sorry, there's a lot of information on this slide, but we have several opportunities to get engaged. So I mentioned the design workshops in early November. Those will be announced soon. And we had a great time at the Corona Night Market a couple of weeks ago. Really good turnout and 95, 100-degree weather. So thanks to all of you who joined. But yeah, I had really good conversations with folks who are very supportive and interested in the project. And we had a board there to sort of engage with some ideas and got some great feedback from folks. So tonight we're holding our virtual open house. We'll be participating in the El Grito event in Moreno Valley. And then we're also going to be planning pop-up events for Paris, UC Riverside, and Riverside Downtown. So stay tuned. Please go to our website here, rctc.org/TOC-events for more information. So thank you all. And I think I'll hand it off to Jess now, and then we'll start responding to questions from attendees here.
Great. Thank you so much, Adam. And I wanted to mention that we also have the presentation available in Spanish. And so we will be putting that along with this presentation in English on the website. We'll take a look at that in just a little bit. And we'll also put this meeting video on as well. Okay, so let's start diving into the questions since we have a few here. So let's start with, if you could, Adam, tell us a little bit, and we'll open it up to the other panelists as well, what you feel some of the most exciting opportunities that you see for TOC along the corridor.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we've met with UCR. That's one exciting opportunity. And there are a lot of students that, you know, we understand would take Metrolink. You know, they're on campus, and on weekends, you know, they'll go home, and if they had a direct access to the the UCR Hunter Park station, you know, they might consider using it. And so we're looking at, you know, some opportunities to create new bike connections from campus to the UCR Hunter Park station, looking at ways to perhaps introduce some student housing and amenities, because UCR is growing rapidly, which is great. And then, you know, in Corona, certainly there's been a lot of momentum, as you saw at the North Main station, a lot of development happening there already. There are other areas that have been identified in that specific plan for, you know, mixed use and multifamily housing near the station. So that's really really exciting, and you know, we think there's an opportunity to really, in the near term, you know, start to promote, you know, more of that kind of development. And then in Paris Valley, you know, because a lot of the land is just vacant and hasn't been developed, you know, that's another opportunity to kind of really help to sort of get in on the front end and help to shape, you know, the way those stations develop, so that they're more transit oriented, walkable, bikeable. And Jane, I don't know if you had any.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at some of the questions, and I'll reference one person who asked a question about, you know, this is a transit oriented development is a great way to kind of boost the region and create downtown areas. And I think that is one of the opportunities here. I think there's been a lot of people moving out of kind of urban central LA. I think Riverside County has always been a great place to find, you know, naturally affordable housing, and this would just be kind of bolstering that economy and that ecosystem, so that there's more mixed use, there's more places to shop, to dine, and more options for where to live, with more types of housing, because what used to be naturally affordable housing is getting less and less so as housing prices kind of skyrocket all around the region. So this would create some opportunities to have different types of housing and make that those available for other people, whether it's, you know, townhomes or apartments, but also then to use kind of that housing to support other types of uses that, you know, everybody in the community wants to see, more commercial and things that are really amenities to everybody. So thanks for the question in the chat, Brianna. That was a great prompt.
Great. Do any other panelists want to weigh in before we move on to the next questions? Okay, and I did see a couple of hand raised, and I didn't want to ignore them, but I would like to ask you to please put your questions or comments in chat, or question and answer. We have a number of questions already, so I'm going to start going through our list. And one of the first questions that came in, Chris's question, is what is the estimated certification of this TOC plan?
Was a question about lead certification or?
I'm not sure if that's certification for lead or if that's more towards completion. So if Chris, if you want to put a little more detail in, that would be helpful for us. And while we give Chris a chance to do that, we'll go to one of our other first questions that came in. So how soon can we make this all happen? That was another question that Brianna had about it. This would be wonderful to have it happen. And how soon can it happen is the question there.
Yeah, that's the $1 million or several $100 million question, I guess. You know, I think the important word with this plan is that we are being strategic, right? Because there are limited public and private resources available, and there are 4 cities that would be not necessarily competing, but that would be eligible for a lot of these resources. And so the great benefit, I think, with the strategic plan is that it is collaborative, right? We're through our technical advisory committee, we're meeting with all 4 corridor cities, including the county, and to look at, from a regional perspective, what are the most important investments that we can make to promote TOC? One major barrier that we've observed is just, the 91 freeway. How do you cross? A lot of the stations are on one side of the freeway, and how do you get to where, development wants to happen on the other side of the freeway? And, the solutions can be very expensive, right? One pedestrian bridge could be upwards of $15 to $20 million, especially for a longer span. And so are there other ways that we can help to address that issue that are more cost effective, that have, grant funds that are, available now? And it's just a matter of preparing, a grant application to look at, maybe it's a new shuttle service, a circulator connecting through the station. Maybe we can make use of some of the existing connections. So Main Street in Corona or La Sierra next to the La Sierra station, so that it's a much more walkable environment, so that if you want to take the station, you work for Kaiser, you want to take the station to La Sierra, you can easily cross the tracks to get to your workplace, and it's a comfortable environment to walk in, to cycle. So we'll certainly be looking at, lower cost options in order to really move these ideas forward and start to address some of the, immediate, needs and some of the barriers that we're observing. And, Jane and her team will be very helpful because, we'll be developing cost estimates, and then HRNA will be identifying funding sources, that can be sought in order to make these improvement projects or infrastructure projects happen quickly.
And if I could just share as well, I know in the this plan is really the first step, because in a lot of grant funding, grant pursuits, they're asking for this type of engagement. They're asking for this type of plan. They're asking us to, do our homework and figure out what the corridor is going to look like before we start building actual transportation infrastructure. So again, I think this is a really critical step, and your feedback will be very, very helpful when we pursue future grant funding for the projects we do identify in the plan.
Yeah, and another great way of doing that is through demonstration projects. And so, a lot of cities, instead of, investing millions of dollars and pouring new concrete curbs and asphalt and building a new streetscape, there's a use of plastic bollards and, thermoplastic paints for bike lanes that can kind of simulate, say, a protected bike lane. And it's much less expensive to do that. And it's temporary, So if it's not working out, it can be reconfigured and find a better solution without spending millions of dollars to actually create permanent infrastructure. And so I think that will be one of the key recommendations that we'll have, particularly from on the mobility side. Some of the streetscape improvements that would be part of the plan.
Great, thank you. And I'll mention we have a lot of questions coming in, so it's possible we won't have time to answer them all tonight. And so if that's the case, we are putting together a frequently asked questions document, and we'll be posting that on the website. So if we run out of time to answer some of the questions that are posed tonight, we do want to get back to you. And we're also making note of the comments. So I saw some agreement with the idea of a pedestrian bridge, for example, regarding the freeway and making it easier to get back and forth. So we're making note of all of those comments and some of the locations that were mentioned as well. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. So one question that came up a little bit earlier is, what is the impact of the COVID-induced work from home on the transit needs of employees to and from work? If anyone's able to weigh in on that.
Yeah, I'll start and then I'll have Sheldon, I think, speak to that. It's been a significant impact. So transit agencies, throughout the country have seen when you compare the 2019 pre-pandemic ridership numbers with where they are today, there's a significant drop and then, slowly starting to rebound. And so, something that RTA, for example, is looking at is their micro-mobility pilot projects, which is really exciting because it just, the economics don't work out to really continue to have full bus routes on particular lines. And so are there ways that service can be provided sort of on demand in a much more efficient way? So that's something that RTA will be implementing over the next couple of years, which is great. But I think maybe Sheldon can speak to at least some of the Metrolink stations what the ridership impacts have been.
Absolutely, thanks, Adam. And in coordinating with Metrolink, we have seen a significant drop in ridership due to COVID, with especially the stay at home. As people have gotten back to the work over the last several months and more, our ridership is starting to rebound. They're at about 40%. The challenge, though, is going forward, trying to understand what the future needs will be. Metrolink's talking about serving different times throughout the day and providing more alternatives. But part of the challenge is also that, Metrolink is for congestion avoidance. And so as the freeways are still congested, if not more so, there's still an opportunity to try to blend it together. And having these transit communities is a great opportunity for people to have easy access to the stations and make taking that Metrolink trip even more attractive for them.
Great. Is everyone ready for another question? Okay, so there's a question about the area, the La Sierra station, and are there additional plans for development in that area? The question is, or comment, so we have good grocers but need green spaces, some restaurants perhaps. Any plans, or is this TOC done? And the TOC is not done, but I'll let you speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, that's certainly something that we observed when we went through our existing conditions work. So in addition to, really this long walk between the station and Magnolia, where a lot of the development is happening, where the Tyler Mall is, further to the north, there are lots of surface parking, right? Which is a barrier, but it's also an opportunity because, as the land values increase, and you start to look at structured parking and more efficient use of the land, you can start to plan for new open space and parks and pocket parks, recreational facilities. And so all of that will be explored. And I certainly, invite you to come to the design workshop and bring those ideas, because that's exactly the kind of feedback that we really want. What really is critical and what is needed at each of the stations. And certainly, to create a sense of place, you need to have great places for people to gather. So yeah, thank you for that comment and those ideas. So look forward to exploring them with you.
And I'll add that we have Kristen Wersinski here, the RTA CEO, and she made a comment we wanted to share with everyone that UCR and RTA are partnering on a new route from Hunter Park to the school, funded by UCR if approved. So that's great news that we want to make sure to share. Okay, and there are a couple of questions around development. So why don't we head over to that topic next? So one question is, what are some of the incentives being considered for developers that you're hoping to bring in to help build out these TLC communities?
Yeah, I'll start and then turn it over to Jane. And so, once we have an understanding of, the new land uses and the type of development that, really the vision for the development plan in each of the stations, we'll be looking at the other side, which is, how do you fund it? How do you attract investment? What are some of the major costs that developers have to incur in order to make these projects happen? A lot of it is parking. And so if we look at ways to require less parking, for example, and for some projects, that makes them far more feasible because it costs upwards of $50,000 per stall to do structured parking. And if you have a few hundred spaces, that's millions of dollars, right? And so our objective here is to create as much high quality housing, both market rate and affordable as possible. So looking at the zoning ordinances and some of the minimum parking requirements, I think will be central to that. And there's CEQA streamlining that communities are already taking advantage of, and other opportunities there to if you're within a transit priority zone, you can bypass the doing a full environmental impact report, which saves you 12 months and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so any way that we can really push, make it easier to develop market rate and affordable housing, we'll certainly be exploring as part of this. And hand it off to Jane.
I feel like you stole my thunder. That was a
sorry
great answer.
Sorry about that.
The only piece I'll add is that we're looking at properties that RCTC owns and opportunities for public-private partnerships in which RCTC works with private developers to develop different types of whether it's housing or mixed-use development. So there's always incentives or ways to kind of structure those deals to make them work for both sides. And I think we're being very realistic about which ones of the stations really are ready for development and are going to be places that the private sector, that private developers are going to want to invest in. And, there may not be a way to incentivize enough development in some of the areas that are still kind of up and coming and do not offer, if there's a lot of vacant land, it's probably for a reason. So I think we're trying to be realistic. We're trying to strategize with publicly owned properties, and then hopefully over time, as some of these projects come to fruition, they can catalyze other types of investment and just make the whole area a little more ripe for development and interesting for private sector developers to build in.
Yeah, a lot of the time it just takes that one catalytic project in an area to start to reshape how people perceive, what could be done, right? Like, oh, okay, this, it's 4 to 5 stories, but it provides, it's designed well, so it integrates into the neighborhood, provides some amenities. Yeah, this is the kind of development that we really want. And then that creates a new market and demand for similar projects to follow. So for some station areas, it's really about, that first project and how it's done, and it, is it done well, and is it the kind of development that we want to attract, because it really is going to reset the character of some station areas.
Yeah, and then, does development actually increase ridership? And
Mhm.
what can that impact look like? Would it be, more frequent trains and things that really can also then bolster the area and make transit-oriented development even more popular?
Yep, absolutely.
Great, thank you for addressing that, Jane. There was a comment that was submitted with some concern about the frequency and the reliability of the system. And so it sounds like you're saying that with the development that may, with more people there, then there may be some more opportunities.
Yeah, and of course, Sheldon or Jenny, if you want to add to it, but it's a little bit of a chicken or egg situation, I think. For more train frequency, ridership is really important. But as a real estate consultant, one way I look at it is just bringing more people to the area, and that will naturally lead to more train ridership. But I know the mechanics of it are probably way more complicated for RCTC to figure out. But it's a little bit of a struggle. What comes first? But ultimately, the goal is more people, more trains, and more ridership.
Right, and just to follow up on that, I think that the people are going to show up one way or another. So you may as well try to have some smart planning to make it so they have access to the train stations, and those resources are utilized as best as possible. So those are all really good points.
Great. So speaking of more people, I think this is a good time for this question. What's the committee's opinion on people who oppose denser housing in general, which is necessary for TOCs? And then the comment is many people in my city, Harupa Valley, oppose denser housing. And the sentiment has been heard elsewhere with concerns for traffic, changing the lifestyle, bringing a certain type of people possibly into the community. And so this attendee is a little concerned about that, those being some barriers to TOC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as a planner, really any project with significant outreach, it really comes down to knowledge, right? And it's really about an information sort of exchange. And so that's really what we're hoping to facilitate as part of our, in-person design workshops, as part of the resources that we'll be posting, those alternatives, the briefing books. It's giving people, ideas to react to, but also an understanding of, why they're important, why is TOC important, and how it will affect people. And the reality is that the vast majority of any land use changes that would take place would likely be within the 1.5 mile from each of the 8 stations along the corridor. So this is not a wholesale redevelopment of Riverside County. If you want to live in a single family home, that there will be plenty of options for that. However, we also want to see if there's a way where, we can provide, more accessible, safe, affordable housing, for folks, for more folks who want to live near a station and, maybe can't afford to or don't want to drive a car. And so, it's really broadening sort of mobility choice, housing choice, in a way that does not negatively affect people outside of the station areas. In fact, more TOCs lead to higher ridership, less congestion, and that benefits everyone. So, we look forward to having those conversations with you to see what exactly is appropriate for your community, and just getting a sense for the kind of the limited scale of change that we're really proposing here, that's again focused on those immediate station areas.
Great, thank you. And hopefully that answered one of the questions, or one of the comments I should say, was just sharing that they were concerned about safety and noise, and wanted to mention that they thought housing should be in the outer perimeter, perhaps a little bit further away. And so it sounds like you're saying, Adam, there's different possibilities, right? Not one size fits all.
Right. And so, I mean, that is that's a valid concern. So there's a lot of freight traffic, in addition to Metrolink and Amtrak service along the 91 line. And so, that's something we'll definitely be addressing. And one way to do it, and you saw that in Fullerton with the Malden Station project, is actually located the parking structure right along the tracks. And so what that does, in addition to triple pane windows and insulation, that mitigates some of the noise impacts that you see there, vibration and noise impacts, from passing trains. And so that's certainly one option, but not all development will be right along the tracks. We'll certainly be looking at 3-4 blocks farther away from the station, for new housing and retail opportunities.
I think we've also seen that the existing housing, and Adam showed pictures of a few of those, like Metra Main, have been really popular and very successful developments. So, there's a lot to be learned from past examples or existing examples. And, those are nice places to be. And I think if you kind of visit them, you'll see that they don't feel sort of like a isolated housing development near the train tracks. They feel like they're part of the community, and they're really quite nice. So I guess innovation on that front has advanced a lot, and we have some really good examples already along this train line to look to.
Yeah.
Great. So we have a question to find out a little bit more about some of the environmental goals of the TOC. So what might that be? And some examples that were given were open space or green building initiatives, LEED certification, that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Net zero buildings. A lot of communities are updating their ordinances and building codes to provide for, certainly as we're we're short on water here in Southern California. So focus on xeriscaping and native low maintenance landscaping. When it does rain, stormwater best management practices, that the reuse of water, certainly. And so those will all be recommendations and changes that we could recommend as part of the plans, because it's both on the on the private side as development happens, but also in the way that new streets are designed, right? So are we designing streets that use recycled materials, or that provide for bioswales and stormwater infrastructure? So those are certainly key considerations, and just the way we build. But how we build and what we build is also important, by providing a direct connection to a station, making it easy and comfortable for people to bike. They're not going to make that trip by car, and that's going to have a direct impact and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, certainly in the aggregate, as more people are choosing to bike and walk.
Okay, great. We have some future-looking questions. So I think we'll go to that direction next. Marvin's asking, are there any additional stations being considered? And if so, where would they be located?
So I think for that, we'll turn it over to Sheldon.
Absolutely, thanks. And this purpose of this particular study is to focus on the 8 stations of the existing 91 Paris Valley line. The only station in Riverside County that's not part of the study is the Harupa Valley Petty Station, just because it's on a different line. But we'll take the best practices from this approach and look at that. As far as future stations, RCTC does have property along the PVL next to the Ramona Expressway, right there at the I-215. So that could potentially be a station there, Ramona Station. In the past, when the study was initially looking at it, there were plans for a station closer to UC Riverside. And that was another one of the questions there. At this point, RCTC is not pursuing that. There was some neighborhood resistance to a station there, but just to let you know that there's not a lot of significant stations currently in the proposal, but we are looking for next gen rail corridors. So there's potential to extend the Paris Valley line out to Hemet and San Jacinto, which could add additional stations. Another future forward-looking is thinking about having rail service down the I-15. That was an initial study that we looked at. Also another question on there as well, but that's definitely further out. There's a lot of significant challenges with that, but that doesn't mean we don't have it on the radar. So we are thinking future, and we'll see where it goes as time goes on.
Great, thank you.
Sheldon, do you want to
right.
share our TIRSEP award that we got recently?
Absolutely, yeah, we have been making progress on improving service on the Paris Valley line. We recently got a $25 million transit intercity rail capital program grant that allows us to expand the station there at South Paris and add an additional layover track so we could increase service out of that location. We're currently getting ready to start construction at a double track project at the Reno Valley March Field Station with an additional platform. And we're working on other projects along the corridor. So we are making improvements both for reliability and future capacity along the system.
Great, thank you. So we talked a little bit earlier about higher education, and there's a comment about Riverside Community College District and the over 50,000 commuter students between Moreno Valley College, Norco College, and Riverside City College. And there's a mention of a partnership with RTA. And so the question is, what opportunities might there be with Metrolink and this as desire expressed to partner with the cities for safer bike paths would be a great opportunity to promote TOCs.
Absolutely. If I could jump in on the Metrolink side, you know, Metrolink has always offered student discounts and RCTC has always supported that. In addition to that, we're working with an additional grant opportunity that will allow us to provide free fares for students, universities, and college students, hopefully to start up next year. So we'll definitely reach out and coordinate with you to make sure that the word gets out. And also, the last couple of years, we've been working hard on first mile, last mile improvements. We've added sidewalk access around the stations. We've included additional bike capacities, bike lockers within the stations, and have been partnering with cities to try to look for opportunities for improved connections, like you mentioned, bike paths, bike trails, to try to make it as easy as possible for people to get in and out of the stations on whatever mode they choose.
Great, thank you. So some more questions about support throughout the community. And so this next one is there a role the general public can play to help get more transportation funds to Riverside County and Metrolink in Riverside as well?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick on the Metrolink side. Yeah, we always appreciate the public support. I think that the best thing is voting by actually taking the train more often. I think that tends to help. And also, we've done a lot of outreach through the years to look at potential future sales tax measure, and support from the communities could help with that if that opportunity comes up as well. So we are applying for grants all the time, and that's even how we got the funding for this particular grant and this effort. So any community support for those is always appreciated.
Great. And then speaking of grants, one of the attendees is mentioning that they've scored the ATP grants for the last several cycles, and there have been each time applications for the bike ped bridges, pedestrian bridges over the freeways, and those continue to score competitively. So if RCTC and other local agencies help prioritize them, then there's a feeling that they will get funded. So we appreciate that comment. Let's see, we talked about the public, and then there's a question about involving city council members and county supervisors and getting a sense for how they might feel about this project. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, I don't know, Ariel, if you want to address that one, or Jenny.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question is, how do city council members from throughout the region and county supervisors have input on this project or feel about this project? And since we're just getting started, I know there's not too much to say yet, but perhaps we can fill people in on the thoughts there.
Oh, and yeah, in preparation to this virtual open house, we've done a lot of outreach to the general public, but also to city elected officials, to just elected officials in our area. And as any other member of the public, you know, they're able to provide their input. I can't speak to any elected official's opinion about this project because I haven't at least seen any official comment on it. So I can't speak to that. But we're always providing updates to the RCTC commission and the different committees about what is happening with this project, and eventually, and depending on how the elected official wants to react, they would do that.
Great.
Yeah, I
thank
think
you.
a key part of this is the study is identifying, working with the community, working with the cities to identify those investments that are most important and that will, more directly lead to the creation of TOCs. Because if there's, if we can come to a, consensus across the corridor about, these are the key projects that we really need in order to make this happen, and it's, supported by sort of a broad cross-section of the community, that's really makes it easier to engage with the elected and appointed officials and help to move things forward, to get funding. Certainly the recent bills, the infrastructure bill from Congress, the Inflation Reduction Act. There's going to be a lot of funding available, and so to the extent that we can, sort of lift up and show that we've done, as a community, our due diligence as to, what it is, what the barriers are, what the solutions might be, and then the investments that need to take place. That I think will be an important outcome of this process.
I think it's also important to note that the cities and counties too are really dealing with providing their fair share of housing. And so, hopefully this plan can be kind of a mutually beneficial plan for everybody, so that in the cities, the public entities around here, the cities and sometimes it applies to county too, can realize a benefit and accomplish some of their goals through this plan as well. So, we're trying to work with those entities just so that everybody can benefit equally.
And at Jane's point, the city staffs are heavily involved in our stakeholder group. So we're working very closely with them to make sure we're in partnership with any of our recommendations.
Great, thank you. And while we're on the topic of outreach, there's a question about the outreach in terms of age and demographics. So I think we touched on the city staff we're working with. We're also working with the community advisory committee members from agencies and nonprofits throughout the region. And then we also are making sure that people in the neighborhoods of the stations know about this. And so we had mentioned the website. In addition, we realized not everyone has access to computers or spends time on the internet. So we did make sure that we were delivering flyers about tonight's open house and sharing information with those who live within about a close distance to the station. So they have that in a hard copy form. And I'd like to just briefly show the website. We have still a number of questions, so I want to make sure that we have enough time for that. But let me share with everyone where we're keeping. It's the home of all the information about the project. And we ask for your help in signing up for information about the project. We have an email list, so we'd like to deliver information straight to your inbox about all of the input opportunities and keep you apprised as this plan progresses, and ask for your help in sharing that with others. So the word of mouth is really very helpful for us. So let me just briefly share this. And then I'll ask that we also put the website link in the chat as well. So this site is available in multiple languages, and there is a button towards the bottom where you can choose different languages. We'll put in English and Spanish in the chat so you have those links. So we have an overview of the station, and we also have the fact sheets here in English and Spanish to give a high-level overview about the plan and the project here. And some more just short information. We have a short video here, 60-second video here on there for a high-level overview. You can also find the timeline. And then in the public outreach here, this is where we'll have the information from tonight's meeting. So the video for those who were unable to attend, we'll put the presentations here in English and Spanish. And then we also have a link to our list of events. So as we mentioned, we're trying to go out to the community. We know not everyone can make meetings like this. So we'll be tagging on to different events in the communities and going to where people already are to let them know about this and get their feedback. As we plan those design workshops that Adam was mentioning in early November, we'll be putting that information here and we invite you to join us. And then this is where you can sign up to receive information about the plan. So we'd love to have you sign up, and I will stop sharing so we can go back to the questions. But please do stay informed through the website and signing up for the email, and we'll put the I see the links are in the chat already. Okay, so that's a little bit about the outreach. Let's go back to the question and answer because there are still some more questions here and a lot of great comments as well. Okay, let's see. Let me go back to the question that I saw was, has our CTC looked into leasing land it owns for development and acquiring land adjacent to the stations to do so? And there's a comment that the rail companies in Asia attain a lot of revenue that way, and BART is looking for something, looking into something similar. And someone shared a link with us, so thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely looking into that as part of the plan. We're looking into RCTC's overall joint development policy. So how they approach these public-private partnerships and just how it kind of all plays out. But definitely we looked at some areas around BART too as examples, case studies. So definitely a great reference point and something that we will be considering. Great.
And then a question about, are there any plans for last mile transportation from the transit center stations? And maybe we could also fill everyone in for those who might not know what last mile or first mile means. Start with that definition and then answer.
Sure. Yeah, first last mile improvements refer to, the trip that you need to take, once you travel on Metrolink, you arrive at your station. How do you get from the station to home or, wherever your destination is? And so, we'll be looking at ways, working with the cities because, the cities have actually done significant planning in terms of, new pedestrian and cyclist and improvement projects, whether it's, bike lanes, protected bike lanes, bike storage facilities. And so, we'll be kind of building off of that work and, identifying, potentially other corridors that could use some improvements. Certainly, if we're getting a lot of feedback from folks through this process, and other areas to sort of focus on. And so, there are different, again, we've had conversations with RTA, with Metrolink, really trying to understand and memorialize, all of the, kind of service improvements and, some of the gaps that might emerge or future improvements as these station areas grow. So as we're starting to see more jobs, more housing near the stations, what are some of the considerations that we need to make in terms of, service improvements, bike ped infrastructure. So yeah, that's a critical piece of this plan. And I should say, while the focus has really been on the half-mile station area, certainly for much of the the development projects that will take place, we are looking at a 5-mile radius from the corridor because we recognize that RTA has a very large service area compared to most transit agencies. And so there's a much bigger sort of transit shed, if you will, and folks who are living in more remote areas. And so how can we improve access, for folks to in some of those outlying areas to get to the station, whether it's by car, shuttle, bus route, whatever it is, whatever improvements need to be made to really, leverage the impact of the station amenity and, allow more people to have easy access, first last mile access to the station.
Right,
Great.
and just
Oh, Jenny,
really
please.
quickly, just to provide some context as to why we wanted to study, within the 5 mile radius of each station is we recognize that this is not a, RCTC issue. It's a region issue, and we need collaborations with our partners across the region, which includes, the transit operators and the cities that have the land use controls. So, that just wanted to bring some context behind that.
Great, thank you. And I'll just read a couple of comments that have come in. So there's a number of comments supporting the pedestrian bridge over the 91, specifically someone asking about a bridge at the 91 from Vine Street Station to Riverside City, and that's mentioned. And then a couple of people saying, someone mentioning they take the train every day. So thank you for sharing that to get to Orange County. And another comment on someone's very happy to hear about the future rail corridor along the I-15 and looks forward to hearing more about it. Someone sharing that they live near UCR and would support an infill station serving campus. I think we talked a little bit about that one already. And so another question here, is there data on parking lot usage, and have lots that have underutilized parking been, could they possibly be converted to mixed use or mixed income development? And they're using perhaps Hunter Park Station as an example.
Yeah, so we do have utilization data that we receive from RCTC. And so that information will be part of our briefing books that will be posted to the project page. And it really does vary by station. Corona West is one of the more heavily utilized stations, just because it's the last station within Riverside County before you cross the OC border. So a lot of people are driving and parking there, and so we'd want to make sure that for stations like that they're going forward, RCTC is able to provide enough capacity for additional parking improvements and expansions. That's certainly very important. But there could be an opportunity in some select stations to both provide for adequate parking and short and long term, but also start to leverage the opportunity to bring in housing and jobs and some redevelopment. So it's a balance, like with anything, but we certainly want to make sure people arriving at the station from all modes, by car, bike, ped, still have access to it, and that's certainly a central focus of RCTC's work. I don't know if Sheldon or Jane or Jenny, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I'll jump in a little bit. I'm always a little sensitive to parking because I know and I hope that the future of Metrolink will be able to grow and fill all the parking needs of our stations. And I think it's really important to kind of future think about what it would take if we were able to run a 20 to 30 minute headways or service on these routes. We could potentially fill up our existing parking fairly quickly. Before the pandemic, the Riverside downtown station, the parking lot was completely full. So trying to get new parking beyond the existing is always challenging, but we're always open to the right idea, the right plan. So we'll definitely have to look to see what that looks like in the future.
Okay, as we're getting down to our last minutes here, there was a request for this question to be answered. A couple of people expressed interest, and this goes back to the development side. Are there ways to use the opportunities for new development to finance the preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing, such as in lieu fees could fund preservation?
Yeah, let's do it, Jen. Um, I think that's a really great idea. And definitely something we should make note of and look into. Yeah, I like that, but no additional thoughts to add other than it's a good idea and something that we should be considering as we're looking at the joint development policy of our CTC and considering future joint development deals. So a really good point.
Great, thank you. And we see that offer too to share some other policies from local cities and areas. So we appreciate that. Thank you, Jen. Okay, there's a question that comes in, so we might want to clarify this for attendees. How is this strategic plan connected with the efforts to expand Metrolink in downtown? Ariel, do you perhaps want to clarify the difference between the projects?
Jenny, I'm not sure if you had that answer.
Well, I think these are two separate projects. And with the downtown Riverside project, I understand that an environmental document was circulated for public review, and that has closed back in February of this year. But if folks have additional questions about that project, I can share the project manager's contact information.
Great, thank you. I wanted to share, I think we've gotten to almost all of the questions, just a couple more comments. One comment about a lot of streets lacking bicycle lanes. And so what a positive thing it will be to have more bicycle lanes on major streets. And then a comment about someone who took the Corona North Main line to Union Station this weekend and loved being able to bring along their bike, but was hoping for more frequency. So I know we talked about that as well. And then a comment that Temescal Valley residents would benefit from the first last mile in that 5-mile region that we discussed, such as a micro transit vehicle that would provide commuter transit service to and from the Corona Transit Center. So I don't know if anyone wants to briefly address that before we close up our meeting today, or the idea of micro transit or something. I know you touched on a few ideas, Adam or Sheldon.
Yeah, we definitely look at that, and we'll look with our partners over at the Riverside Transit Agency, who have done a great job through the years of providing feeder service to the Metrolink. The commuter link that runs all the way from Lake Elsinore does make stops in that region. That could potentially be an option, but looking for some more specialized service is definitely something we could consider in the future. But thank you for your comment.
Great. And then another comment about how people would be attracted, even more attracted to Riverside County if the freeways and the roads were less congested. And the more opportunities the transit sites, kind of like we just discussed, would encourage more development in Riverside County. Let's see. Again, another comment about having more frequency, which would be helpful. And I think we've gotten just about to everything. And there's a comment about the question regarding in lieu fees. The city of Riverside is currently studying the feasibility of an inclusionary housing policy, which would include an in lieu fee program for affordable housing. So there'll be a workshop for the City Planning Commission in early October. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, and we can look out for that. Okay, in our last few minutes, Adam, would you be able to bring up the slides again so we could share with people the email contact, so we can make sure. And while you're doing that, I'll read a couple more comments that came in. Someone said they can't wait for the next phase of the presentation, and that RTA provides great transportation along the Temescal Valley. So thank you about that. And then there's a comment about the Corona North Main Station. There's only one connection to Eastvale, Lupa Valley. So one alternative would be trying to find a connection train, Riverside and back to the station. Thank you. We've had so many great comments, and I apologize if I've missed any of them because there's so many of them. But there is, let's see, I think we have time for one more that just came in. When is the third track project supposed to be completed? Do we have a date for that? It was mentioned earlier.
The third track project.
Or maybe double tracking.
Yeah, we're
is what it's
doing
meant.
double track work at the South Paris station. We just got the funding, so it'll probably be 3 or 4 years away from now. So it is moving forward, which is exciting.
Great, thank you. And then we're putting our website, excuse me, well, we'll put the website as well, and then we're putting the email again. So if you have any other questions or we didn't quite get to your question tonight, please do email us and we'll be keeping our eyes out on that. Happy to continue to answer questions. Of course, we'll be continuing this study and working with everyone. Hopefully you'll be able to join us for the design workshops, and we'll find a way for you to contribute if you're unable to attend those. And again, there's the website and the email address. And then there was one last, looks like, request about the City of Riverside comment. And so just to repeat that, thank you from one of the City of Riverside staff who was mentioning that they are working on an in lieu fee program for affordable housing as part of a housing policy. And so they are planning a city planning commission early October. So I imagine you can get some more information on their website. And yes, so thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, and we would love to see you at our design workshops, as we mentioned, and at our some of our events as well, as we're out in the community. Thank you everyone for your time. We really appreciate it. And again, we'll be updating the website with the presentation and the video from tonight's. So we look forward to sharing that with you as well. Thank you everyone, and thank you to our panelists, and thank you to everyone who spent your evening with us. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks again. Take care.